Hello, everyone. We're so glad that you're able to join us today for a very exciting webinar on moving mission critical databases to the cloud with confidence. We are very fortunate to have two leading experts, one from IDC, Carl Olofsson, who is a research VP in data management software, and Action's Emma McGrattan, Senior Vice President of Engineering and one of the leading experts in databases. Today, we're going to be taking Q&A, but you need to enter those into the Q&A panel, and we'll be covering those at the end of the webinar. That's all I have for housekeeping. So without further ado, Carl, it's over to you.
Okay, thanks, Teresa. I would just also point out that if you're looking for the Q&A, there's a little symbol on the bottom of your screen that says Q&A and has two little balloons on it. So you just click on that and you should be able to enter your questions there. Okay, so thanks for joining us today. I'm going to be giving you a sort of an overview on the issues involved in moving mission critical databases to the cloud with confidence. And I think Emma is going to follow me and talk about the particulars involving Ingress, which I think is going to be of particular importance to a lot of you. So without any further ado, so this is my topic, moving to the cloud with confidence. It's a moment of decision for Ingress users. I'm going to get into why it's a moment of decision, but first let's take a look at the topics. Why to move to the cloud at all? What's the point of this? I mean, why are we suggesting that this should be a good thing to do? Then we're going to take a look at some of the experiences of people who have moved their databases to the cloud. We'll take a look at the characteristics of cloud services. What kinds of services can you expect? And then we'll have a look at Ingress Next, which is Action's cloud database service for Ingress users, and see how that stacks up to what we've been talking about and wrap up with some essential guidance. So why move to the cloud? These are sort of general qualities that you can expect when you go into a cloud environment. I'm using the Incredibles here because, moving to the cloud takes your database implementation to a place where you become a superhero. And these are the reasons why. The cloud offers flexibility. So on-prem, as you know, if you want to deploy or redeploy or expand or change your database, you have to allocate resources. You may have to acquire resources, which means you have to get purchase order approved and all that. You have to get the systems and equipment installed, configured. You have to prep it. You have to load it. In the cloud, you don't do any of those things. You just say, I want to have this much processor power. I want to have this much storage. I'm going to load it up with the workload that I have, and you're ready to go. So that level of flexibility means that you can do a lot of things that you couldn't do, particularly on the development side, but also in the deployment side. On the deployment side, it means that, for instance, when you have heavy periods of usage, you can bump up the resources that you have allocated, and then when they drop, you can drop them back down. Whereas on-prem, the resource allocation is fixed. It also means that you can deploy in development mode. You can very easily spin up development instance of a database, for instance, to run testing. And then when it's done, you shut down that development instance and you only pay for what you use. From a resilience standpoint, I mean, recoverability and high availability are obviously pretty top of mind issues for anyone looking at operational production database deployment. Within the cloud, you can set things up so that you have replication to a duplicate instance in another region, so that if you have some kind of significant failure, you don't have to lose a lot of time. You can switch over to that region and carry on. Whereas if you want to set up an HADR system in your own data center or with a backup data center or something like that. It's a lot of work, a lot of expense, a lot of planning involved in that. And it's continual effort to maintain. On the security front, for years people said, oh, I don't know about the cloud. I just think it's, my data is precious to me and I'm just afraid that it's not secure enough. Well, what people have discovered is that their own data centers are actually quite porous. And if you're like most larger enterprises, you have a very complex data center with many applications, many servers. And there's bound to be some of those servers which have direct access to the internet that haven't been maintained all that well, and where bad actors can penetrate your system and get at resources that can make your life very difficult. Obviously, there are things like denial of service attacks. There are things like there are things like the ransomware attacks and things of this nature. So being able to have that extra level of protection that's afforded by a cloud service provider is really important. It also means that typically, security patches are applied right away. So at the systems level, of course, as a cloud service provider does that. At the database level, if you're working through a managed database service, the database service provider will do that for you. This in contrast with what you do in your own data center, where you say, oh, gee, it's so disruptive, to apply security patches. We'll just wait on those patches, and you batch them up. And after 6 months, you apply them. That means that for 6 months, you're vulnerable to known methods of attack because you haven't taken those steps to protect yourself. The speed issue is one of, again, this goes together with flexibility. I can throttle up or throttle down dynamically, and the only issue there becomes one of budget, whether I really want to spend that much money on extra processors to speed up my system. But if I do, or if I need to do that on a periodic basis, I can do that. I can get extra speed without much effort. Whereas again, in the data center, you can't do that at all. You have to configure the data center for how it's going to perform under the most adverse conditions, set it up for the minimum performance level under the most adverse conditions, which means that most of the time you're basically, you could say you're wasting capacity because you're way over provisioned for what you need for your system. And finally, there's adaptability, and that has to do with the fact that you can change things around at a moment's notice. You can add storage resources, you can add databases, you can change the way that systems are connected, and it's all virtualized and dynamic. So you can do it just by taking advantage of the virtualized environment that you have in the cloud. Whereas again, if it's your own data center, there's a lot of manual work to be done. If you're going to make any kind of configuration changes at all, it's a non-trivial exercise. It costs time and money. It often involves things like third shift work. It may, if the third shift work doesn't work out, if somebody makes a mistake, you could have an outage period because you have to repair, correct for the mistake. So you tend to be conservative, and that's natural. You tend to be conservative about what kinds of changes you're going to make in your data center. Whereas you can be more flexible in the cloud. You can try things, and if they don't work out, it doesn't cost you that much. You go back to the way it was before, and you only pay again for what you use. It's sort of like that insurance commercial. You only pay for what you use. That's the great thing about the cloud. So those are the motives for moving to the cloud. We did a survey early in the year to gauge the experience of people who have been migrating their databases to the cloud. And we asked them a whole bunch of questions. These are two of them that we thought you'd find interesting. One was, is your company migrating data from on-premise clouds to the database cloud? Or where are you at with that? What we found was actually surprising because 63% of the respondents are actively migrating. That means that right now they're moving production data from the data center into the cloud. It's astonishing, and I didn't expect it to be that high. I didn't expect it to be over 50%, honestly, or even maybe a little less. So that tells us that there's a very aggressive process underway to move to the cloud. Another 29% said they're planning to start migration within the next 3 years, and only 8% say they're still trying to sort of sort things out, figure out what they're going to do with migration. So that's a pretty important and telling response. The other question that we thought you'd find interesting was, what benefits did you achieve after migrating your on-premise databases to the cloud? Now, here's the thing: higher availability, of course, you would expect people to say that, and things like better scalability and flexibility. But look at number 2, improved security. Now, we asked a question similar to this in another cloud survey a few years ago, only it was negatively cast. It was, what would it hold you back from migrating to the cloud? The number 1 item in that survey that we got back was security. We don't think it's safe. Now it's the other way. It's totally the other way around. People say, actually, it's more safe because, we know that we're terrible at security, to be perfectly honest. We have servers that still have the administrator password on them, and people can hack in anytime they like. You go to the cloud, none of that happens. Everything is professionally managed at all times. All the security settings are the latest. All the security software is the latest. All the software that has patches available for security purposes is the latest, and you don't have to do anything except pay your subscription fee. So that's pretty good. Another question we asked was, what percentage of production data is currently in the cloud, and now, and what do you expect in the next 3 years? And what the answer we got back was that was also very interesting, which is that, again, we found people to be much further along than we expected, because if you look at these numbers, you find that 25%, the larger numbers are 25%, 50%. That means that the 2 biggest responses are between 25 and 49%, and from 50 to 74% of our production data is in the cloud. Wow, I mean, that's a lot. Again, bigger than we expected, and it shows that there is an aggressive move to the cloud underway. And the within the next 3 years part is also interesting. As you can see, that those lines are shorter in the smaller categories because people already have so much of their data in the cloud, and taller in the out categories. And look at that. There's even around 10%, just under 10%, believe that 100% of their production data will be in the cloud within the next 3 years. So we use the term cloud native a lot, and of course, a lot of vendors use it too. And we just want to put a little bit of a stake in the ground as to what this term means. It doesn't mean born in the cloud. Okay, I mean, if you're born in the cloud, of course, you ought to be cloud native. But to be cloud native, it means that your software can use cloud services. It can manage its resources dynamically. It can invoke the appropriate services to allocate, extra, processors, to allocate storage for itself, to in some cases move resources around if needed. Unlike a data center software, which is designed to work with fixed resources. You run a database management system on a server, and it has fixed volumes in which the data resides. And that's not the way it works in the cloud. Everything is virtualized and dynamic. So being cloud native means that the database system can take advantage of that dynamism. And it enables the pay-as-you-go model, so that, as the database needs more resource, it gets more resource, you pay for the resource. When the demand drops off, it can release some of that resource and you pay less. And a cloud native database should allow you to modify the circumstances of operation. It should enable you to do these things without interruption and without switchover costs. Now, I will be honest in telling you that not all database management systems that claim to be cloud native can do this. Some of them actually require a little bit of outage time in order to make certain kinds of adjustments. But really, most they should, and the aspiration, of course, is that all of them should enable you to make modifications without without outage, without downtime. The database management systems that work well with cloud native, a cloud native database management system works well with cloud native applications. And cloud native applications have these characteristics. They typically have a microservices architecture, which means they've been broken into little pieces that can run dynamically in containers. They run in standard container configurations that are typically governed by Kubernetes, and they may have some management software that runs over that, such as OpenShift or something like that. And they can be executed in a serverless manner, which means that they can operate in such a way that when they're not doing anything, there's nothing there. So the total number of CPU that you pay for can go to 0. So what do we expect of a managed database cloud service? What are we getting for our subscription fee here? One is you get transparent maintenance of the database software. You no longer have to worry about patches or upgrades. You don't have to schedule them. You don't have to tell the users, this application is going to be unavailable from 12 to 2 because we're upgrading the database system or something like that. It ensures uninterrupted operation with even performance. So in other words, when the volume of work goes up, it can compensate for that, so that from a user standpoint, they don't notice a slowdown, as is often the case with on-prem systems. The easy spin up of database instances is particularly important for development. And I keep mentioning this because one of the big things that hampers application development is the time and effort and cost involved in setting up test environments. Because typically in the data center, you have to wait for test systems to become available. You have to schedule time on them. The time has to include, the installation and setup of your test database instance so that you can run it. And as a consequence, development projects tend to batch up what they do, again, so that they can minimize the number of times they have to do this, which means that your innovation is slowed in those cases. In the cloud, it's completely different. You get an idea, you want to try it out, you can spin up a test instance and try it out. There's no waiting, there's no scheduling, there's no setup time, nothing. It's just there and it works. It also, the managed cloud database system should provide security policies that align with your own data security policies. And again, it's flexible and dynamic. So you set the settings according to your requirements and rules, and it just does it. The database resources should be able to grow and shrink as needed. Obviously, you want to put some governing on that. I mean, we're familiar, particularly on the analytics side. It's not so much for you Ingress customers to worry about, but large data warehouses, sometimes you have situations where somebody has a runaway query or something like that, and it goes nuts, and suddenly you get a bill that had, during this period you had 5,000 CPUs assigned to this task because it kept, scaling up. So you should be able to put governing on the system so that you have a ceiling, so that you don't break the bank. But outside of that, you have a lot of ability to dynamically grow and shrink the database resource allocation. It's managed by experienced, trained professionals who are experts in database technology in question. This is important for several reasons, not to take anything away from all the smart folks in the data center who are managing your system today, because, but it does mean that they can use their expertise to help you build more effective applications. Well, there are people who are providing the database service, who are managing the database system and keeping it running. And because they typically they work for the company that developed the technology in the first place, they naturally have the inside track on how it works and what the best techniques are for making it work well. And dynamic failover, HADR, multi-region support, all that kind of thing. Those are just features of the cloud. Nothing that you have to worry about. You don't have to have big planning meetings and assign people tasks to get this set up and running and then check it periodically. It's all done for you. It's part of the service. So the question when you go to the cloud is always, do you stay with your current database technology or do you go to another database technology? Everybody is facing this problem. And there's a lot of interesting options, one must admit. I mean, there's a whole bunch of open source databases out there. There's different kinds of databases. Should we go to like a document database, or should we go to, in some cases, a key value store? Well, for one thing, and honestly, there are cases where it does make sense to switch, but in most cases, for established applications, particularly applications that are doing business critical and mission critical work, such as accounting work and sales tracking and so on and so forth, disturbing that is probably not a real smart thing to do. If you go to a new database system, you're going to have to rewrite the applications for the new system. Now, you may have to do some rewriting anyway, just to make it work better in the cloud. But at least if you stay with the same system, you're working with the same database. Here, you'd have to rewrite for a new system. So you have to retrain your database professionals on the new system. They have to learn all the tools and tips and techniques for making that system, work the way you want it to. Obviously, again, the operational parts are being handled for you, but there's a lot of other stuff you need to know to successfully deploy applications on a database. You may have to recalibrate system requirements, especially if you have an application you've been working with for years and it's set up to deliver just the kind of performance that you require and, has the right characteristics. You go to a new system, you're going to discover that things are different. It does certain things faster, it does other things slower. You have to recalibrate to deal with that. And it might require staffing changeover. It might require you to get new people who are experts in the new environment, which means when you do that, that you lose institutional knowledge and memory, because the people who had been working on the existing systems know how those systems work. They know the history of those systems. They know why things were done the way they were done. When you change over the staff, you lose that knowledge and experience. If you stay with the current database system, you have a smoother transition of applications to the cloud. As I said before, you may need to rewrite some of them or rewrite parts of them to take advantage of the cloud environment, but at least you're operating within the same context, same database, the same basic structure of the application, same functional characteristics. You don't need to convert the data. This is actually a big deal. In some cases, people really get hung up converting data from one database system to another. Formatting can be different, or the way the data is organized in the database may be different because it works better organized one way as opposed to another in a different database. You'd think that with relational databases, they would all be the same, but they're not, okay? When you stay, you can leverage your existing expertise and all that institutional knowledge that you have, that your staff has built up, so that they are continuing to build an effective environment that has all the characteristics that you need to see present in order to be successful in the cloud version of your applications and database. And one other thing which applies particularly to Ingress users is cloud independence. If you stick with a cloud independent database as Ingress is, and there are others, but as Ingress is, then that means you have the flexibility to deploy the application on Amazon or Google or Azure, or you can move them around, or maybe you're deploying some applications in one place and some on another, but you want to use the same underlying database technology. You have the option to be able to do that. If you go particularly with a database system that is built into a cloud environment, a particular cloud environment, then you're locked into that cloud environment, and that's something to take into account as well. So I've talked about the move to the cloud. I've talked about what's involved in moving to the cloud, experiences of users and considerations. Now, how does Ingress measure up? Well, it certainly the Ingress Next, which is the managed database cloud service from Actium, meets all the requirements of a cloud database service. It's got the transparent maintenance. It's got the uninterrupted operation. It's got the easy spin up of instances, consistent data security policies, can grow and shrink database resources as needed. It has dynamic failover and disaster recovery. without you really having to do anything. So you can stay with Ingress. So there's no reason to rewrite your SQL or convert any of the data. It's already in the right format. Actian also provides a cloud-native database that runs on Kubernetes containers, but with the same database functionality. So you're working in that highly flexible virtualized environment, but the database behavior and functionality is the same as what you're used to. There's no between the cloud platform provider and Actian. You no longer have to worry about any of those things that you always have to worry about every year. Well, as our servers are aging out, what are we going to stick with the same type of server? And then if you do and you upgrade the servers, then there's all that effort and bringing them in, loading them up, running parallel testing, all that kind of stuff. You don't do any of those things. You don't have to worry about upgrades. You don't have to worry about patches or security patches. They're all automatic. And you can bring your open road applications as well, because they all work on the Ingress environment. And the open road server is fully supported in this environment. So in summary, the move is onto the cloud, as you saw from our survey results. It's where we're going because it just makes sense. You get the dynamic scalability and flexibility, security, operational transparency. You can define and launch databases dynamically. And these are really big deals. I mean, this is actually extremely time-consuming business, creating new database instances. And now you don't have to do that. Management of the underlying system by trained professionals also relieves you of the burden of having to do all those operational things that you have to do today to keep the system running. Moving to a cloud database service based on independent relational database system also ensures cloud independence, so you can run on the cloud of your choice. And the next managed service offers all the benefits of cloud native database support and fully functional support for open road as well. So the choice is yours. If you have, in some cases, special requirements, and some people do, there's some data that you may, for a particular physical reason, need to keep in your data center, need to keep close to physical systems that are part of your operations, then you may need to keep those things in your data center. But for everything else, or if this is not the case, I would say that there are compelling reasons not only to shift to the cloud, but certainly to take seriously the option of moving to Ingress Next, which gives you virtually no conversion pain. And I'm going to be here to answer questions at the end of the session, and other questions you can post, or if there are any that we don't get to, I can assure you that we'll get back to you in good time. And I'm going to hand things over to Emma to talk to you about Next.
Great, thanks a million, Carl. I love that you have the Twitter handle Database Guru. That was cool. I didn't notice that before. So my name is Emma McGrattan, and I'm Senior Vice President for Engineering here at Actian. I started my career working with the Ingress database over 30 years ago. So I've been here quite some time. One thing that I wanted to point out is that the technology that we're using here, the Ingress database that you're using there, has evolved very much over the years. So when Carl talks about building this out as a cloud native solution, it's completely Dockerized, it's deployed in a Kubernetes cluster, we're using Helm charts for configuration. It includes that analytics engine that we previously added to Ingress from our vector analytics product. So you can analyze that data right there as you're collecting it inside your relational database. You've got an analytics capability that's just part of the platform. So it is a product that continues to evolve. So while we have that heritage that really helps us in building credibility, we have modernized the platform quite a bit. So many of you will not be aware of the fact that Actian has built out a portfolio of products that's actually set us up nicely for building a hybrid cloud data platform. So many of our Ingress customers are unfamiliar with our data integration capabilities, with our IoT and edge database capabilities, with the analytics capabilities that I just described. So just to make you aware of that we have three main pillars of development. One is mission critical data management, and certainly Ingress lives in there. Then we've got the high performance data analytics, where we continue to beat the competition in benchmarks quite handily. So our analytics technology, you could think of it as akin to Snowflake, but we'll outperform them by anything from 6 to 14x on raw performance, and we'll beat them on price by about 1/6 the cost. So coming in dramatically underpriced and overperforming there. And then our enterprise data integration capabilities are are technologies that our customers bet their business on every day. So for example, ADP, the giant payroll processing company, uses us for onboarding new clients. So if you can imagine, a large organization signs up to ADP for payroll, it's very complex, right? You've got to look at all of the benefits that are providing. You've got to look at commission systems, expense systems, and feeding all of that information in, and you've got to get it right. Every 2 weeks, it's got to be right. So that's using our integration technologies, the same integration technologies that are part of the Avalanche platform that we're going to talk about today. And as Carl mentioned already, we've built out the Avalanche platform to be cloud independent. So it's a cloud native architecture that we can deploy in any cloud that can support Kubernetes cluster deployment. So today it's certified for AWS, for Azure, and for Google Cloud. But if you had a specific need that wasn't one of those main public cloud providers, we'd be happy to engage in a conversation. Across the bottom of the screen here are some of the logos that we have for Ingress. And it's quite interesting to me that when we have conversations with these customers, they're all on various parts of a journey to cloud. So for instance, Lufthansa systems have already moved their Ingress databases to cloud. And we talked to the University of Oxford, where they're using our Ingress database as part of the clinical trial services unit. And they used Ingress for collecting all of the information for the AstraZeneca trial for the COVID vaccine that was approved. And then they use our vector technology for analyzing that data. And they say they're never going to cloud, that they've got too much sensitive information, that they don't, getting back to Carl's point about security, they don't trust that there are not sufficient bad actors that are after their information that might be able to penetrate cloud, that they've decided that they're going to keep all of that data on premises. HSS Hire, this is a hire firm in the UK that will hire you anything from a jackhammer through to a bulldozer. I mean, just massive construction equipment. And they use Ingress for keeping track of all of the requirements before they can loan out that equipment. Do you have a license for driving a bulldozer? That type of thing. And their cloud journey is kind of bifurcated. They want to move some of their operations to cloud, but they've got some stuff that they want to keep on premise. So they're a hybrid deployment. So just in this small sample of customers, you'll see that they're all on various stages of a journey to cloud, with Oxford University saying that their journey is never going to begin, but I suspect over time that'll change. So as we talk to Ingress customers, what we find from them is that they're certainly on this journey. Digital transformation is important, and with the shift to working remotely that COVID pushed upon us, we're seeing a lot of hybrid work styles, right? So we've got some people returning to offices, some offices that have been closed and will never reopen, and what we're seeing is that that's kind of pushing this journey to cloud forward at a pace that we wouldn't have anticipated 2 years ago, but we're seeing it really move very quickly today. And we also find that when it comes to application experiences, we've all gotten used to the type of experience you'll have with a mobile phone application. We're kind of expecting that in business applications as well. So that modernization of the application experience is something that our customers are asking for. And then this, delivering everything as a service, and so all of the convenience and cost containment and security that can provide is something that we're hearing from customers as well. So the Ingress Next strategy is to design out a pathway that will enable all of our customers to take the next step with their Ingress technology set. So regardless of what that may be and what that might mean within an account, Ingress Next is kind of this all-encompassing strategy that will manage that for them. So we're supporting the customer journey to the cloud with their Ingress database. And as I say, we will continue to support an on-premise deployment, but we're certainly seeing a rush to cloud that was unanticipated when we started 2020. And what we're also seeing is that in this application modernization, because there's a lot of investment that's been made in the Ingress related applications over the years, that they don't want to walk away from that investment. That's business logic that's been proven, that works, that feeds into other systems, and that draws from other systems. So what we're hearing from customers is what they'd like to do is a complete refresh on the user interface, but retain the business logic that they've developed, because that works, but just give them the ability to provide a more modern application experience. So what we've done as part of the Ingress Next strategy is to enable that. And as well as, once you've kind of disconnected the business logic and you've got the database logic, both of them being delivered as a service in the cloud, then you can, unleash modern application development. As you build out new applications, they can make use of that business logic, they can make use of the database service in the cloud, and you can build, more cloud native applications. So if we look at the modernization of the database first, we're providing 4 options. So the first is continue to use on-premise, and we do have customers, as I say, that do that. Largely what we'll find is that the customers with no desire to move to cloud are either nervous about security, like the Oxford University guys were, or they're on a Unix platform that doesn't easily translate to cloud, and that a first step may be to move from Solaris, HP UX, or AIX to Linux, and then once they're on Linux, move to cloud. But we do see that there is a certain percentage of our customer base that don't yet have plans to move to cloud. The easiest way for a customer to get to cloud is obviously to take their existing licenses and bring those to cloud. And what we've done here is, for the BYOL model, is provided a Docker container version of Ingress. So you can very quickly spin up Ingress cloud instances in using that Docker container. To me, that's it's a very, very easy first step to cloud, but I don't think you get any of the benefits of. You don't get the full benefits of cloud. So you would, if you're using for development environment, obviously with a Docker container, you can spin up an instance quickly, but you don't really get all of the benefits of cloud going that route. Where I think things get much more interesting is when we deliver Ingress as part of the Avalanche platform. And here there's 2 options. So for customers that have an Ingress ULA, and that's an unlimited right to use Ingress, we can give them this Avalanche platform where they get the services that you'll see in a second, but they don't need to pay for the Ingress component of the platform because they have an unlimited right to use that. So that's our platform as a service offering for Ingress customers. And then the database as a service is the entire thing is provided to you, and you can literally buy $2.50 worth of Ingress, use that for an hour, and that's your commitment done. Hopefully you buy much more than that, but that's the database as a service being delivered as part of our Avalanche platform, and it'll be available across AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. I think it's probably best if you see the platform rather than me try to describe it. So if we come in here, what you'll see is that we have an Ingress instance here that's running. I've chosen to set it up on Google Cloud, so we're using Google Cloud Storage. This is a small environment. I've started it at actually the smallest size that we support, which is a 1 Avalanche unit. And we can scale this, as Carl was talking about. You can very easily scale the environment as your business needs change. Now, in this version of the product, we don't have intelligent scaling where it can identify, here are some query response times that are outside the norm, and I want you to scale dynamically. That's not there yet, but that intelligent scaling will be coming with the ability to contain costs. So when Carl talked about, running something like a Cartesian product where you have thousands of cores that are being used, you would have the ability to cap it and say, I never want to deploy more than an 8 AU instance. Support a variety of regions, and we, from a security perspective, we have an IP allow list. So this is a list of the IP addresses that can access the service. And you can put cider blocks in here, or if you wanted to use a technology like a private link, so that anybody coming in from your domain could access the environment. All of that is possible. From a cost perspective, we looked at the fact that if the service isn't being used, if it's solved the last query, we haven't seen a new query in this period, automatically just stop it. It's likely that somebody forgot that they had it running. So from a cost containment perspective, I think that's interesting. And then this week, we've just added this new feature for scheduling. So here we have the ability to say, I would like to start the warehouse at a particular time, maybe daily. I want it to start up at 8 o'clock, and I have the ability to come in here and to set that. So I can schedule that. External table access, this allows us to connect to files that are on external storage and make them look as though they're tables within the Ingress database. This is embarrassing. I had a bad response on my schedule there. So to connect to the warehouse, you just choose the technology that you want to connect. So let's say ODBC, very popular for Ingress customers. So here we're saying I want to connect through ODBC. If I don't have our client runtime, I can download it by clicking on this. And if I want to connect, this is the connect string. So if I want to use Power BI to connect to my Ingress database, I will just paste this string into Power BI or Excel or whatever it may be, and I can connect right away. Monitoring is important for customers. They want to see what's happening within the environment. Maybe there's some table skew that we need to bring your attention to. Maybe you're banging your head off the limit of some of your caches. We have the ability in here to see exactly what's going on and to take action upon that. And then finally, we've got this query editor in here. And here what we've done is put just a really simple query editor that the database administrator could use to make sure that whatever job they just ran worked just fine. So here we've got some saved queries. I can run this. What you'll see here is that we've got keyword matching, keyword highlighting. We also have syntax completion as part of this. Down here, I can see the set of results for this particular query. If I'm a visual person and I want to create a horizontal bar graph of this, I can say I want to plot origin airports versus total arrival delay, and I'll see a bar chart of all of the options here. So all of this, and what we're trying to do is to give the database administrator everything that they need to be successful, all within the single environment. As Carl said, we're responsible for securing it. We'll do all the mundane tasks like backup, failover, all of that is all part of the platform. I mentioned earlier integration capability. So here we have the ability to say, I want to create an integration job, and I can set something up that could be quite a sophisticated data integration job. As data integration jobs, it could be something very simple, like maybe I want to just load some files in here. So here I can say, I'm going to connect to my Ingress database. I'm going to create a table called Emma. I'm going to append some data into this table. I'm going to browse to a file. Looks like that's a fine looking file. And now I say upload that data, and that's going to go now and create a table inside my database. There we go. It's uploaded. That was just 32 records, happened almost instantaneously, but obviously you've got larger data sets and you can do all of that. And we also have, quite a lot of different integration capabilities, and that's an area you're interested in. And we'd be happy to set up a demonstration where we dived into that in greater detail. We just wanted to kind of give you a sense for what the platform looks like. One thing just to emphasize is that when you come in here and you want to create a database, you're not tied to any one cloud. So you can choose at any point to switch clouds. So maybe you're just starting out in your cloud journey. Maybe you want to see what do all three of them look like, and what does the performance and the cost look like for your workload. And we give you the ability to do all of that. So yeah, I think that was easier to show you than it was to describe what the platform is. But basically, what we've built here is a hybrid cloud data platform. Hybrid because we can deploy it on-prem and cloud, and then obviously across clouds. And we've tried to make it really easy for existing customers to adopt it. So it's 100% compatible with what you're doing with Ingress on-prem today. And it's designed to give you that scalability, right? So let's say you're using it just for disaster recovery purposes. As you get your feet wet in using cloud. And what you could have is a one Avalanche unit instance that's running in the cloud. You could be feeding your journals to that instance in the cloud and replaying the journals. And in the case of a catastrophic failure, you could say, okay, I want to go from that one AU instance to 128 AUs because I'm going to switch my business operations to it. And all of that is possible with this. And then obviously you get the reliability that's built into all of the various components within the cloud, as well as a part of our cloud native architecture has that resiliency as part of it. And we've got the hybrid deployment, so it can be on public cloud or on premise. And we will be delivering a VPC whereby we can say, because it's a cloud native architecture, we've separated the control plane, which is where you'd say, create my database, back it up, that type of thing. From your data plane is completely separate. So you could say, I'd actually be much more comfortable if the data lived inside my environment, so my VPC, and we will have the ability next year to deliver upon that. And the pricing models is designed to meet whatever your needs may be. So if you have a ULA, we wanted to make sure that you could participate in this, as we would be charging you for the Ingress component. If you wanted to buy a certain number of Avalanche units to get started, we'd be happy to engage in that as well. And then from the application side of things, we continue to have customers that have applications that look like these green screen applications. Typically, it's where it's data entry intensive applications. So it's somebody that is typing a lot, and they have this muscle memory they've built up in their fingers. They know that it's 4 tabs and an F5 to get to populated drop-down list or whatever it may be. We do have those customers, and HSS Hire was one of those. The people that were sitting in their offices loaning out rental equipment were these data entry clerks. And what they were able to do was actually use our technology to encapsulate that business logic, right? And what they did was they transformed from these green screen applications into open road frames. So now they have an open road application that can access that very same business logic. For somebody who wanted to deploy it in a GUI, it has that that same look and feel to it, a little more modern. But then we have what we call our WebGen utility. And what this will do is take these open road frames and convert them into HTML5 pages and some JavaScript. So now you can have a generated web application. So you can go all the way from this green screen to a generated web application, leveraging that same business logic. You're not rewriting any of that. So the, checking, a customer has a license, a customer has these permissions, whatever it may be, all of that logic that feeds into other systems is retained. So all you're doing is replacing the UI. And to me, you want to get to a point where that UI is almost disposable, right? If a year from now, the trend in user interface is something completely different, provide that ability through our JSON RPC mechanism to call into the business logic, and will free you up to develop these applications in the technology of your choosing. So for Open Road, we will continue to support these Open Road on-premise deployments that we have today. I think where things get more interesting is, as you deploy this business logic inside the Open Road server, and you want that to be a managed service that Actian provides, Open Road server becomes part of the Avalanche platform. So that's pretty much what the Ingress Next strategy is all about. It's about enabling our Ingress customers to take the next step with the technology. That next step is likely a journey to cloud. If it's not, that's fine. But the cloud journey for each of our customers is slightly different. We haven't seen any 2 customers with the same cloud journey. And what we want to do is to make sure that we can cover all of the various options. So if it's BYOL, if it's a fully managed service, we'll work with you on what works best for your business. We'll prove it out in a proof of concept, and we'll make sure that you're comfortable with it. Getting back to what Carl said earlier about the expertise, right? The Ingress services team works very well with the Ingress Cloud Ops team and our DevOps teams to support these cloud deployed instances and to keep everything running. We've got years of knowledge built up in managing, configuring, optimizing these environments, and all of that is brought to bear in the cloud service that we provide. So for our customers, deploy on-premise or the cloud of your choosing. You can manage it, we can manage it, we can co-manage it if that's something that you'd prefer. We can help you with migrating existing application development and applications to cloud. There we're working with partners in the different geographies to help us deliver on those application migration requirements. So we want to set you up so that if you don't have ABF development skills and you don't have somebody that can bring that business logic into the app server and bring you into a modern deployment, we have partners that will help you and will be able to do that. This is a technology that will be released by the end of this year or maybe early into next year. So what we'd love is to get some early adopters through our early access program. So if you're interested in that, you can shoot me an email at emma@actian.com. And I'd be delighted to sign you up for that program. So in that program, we will set you up with access to the environment. Actian will fund any of the work that you do on there. And when you think you're ready to sign off on it, we will be happy to work with you. So that's it. So at this point, I think, Teresa, we're ready for any questions that may have been submitted.
Yeah, thank you, Carl and Emma, for such an awesome presentation with such great information. We do have time for questions. And the first is for Carl. Actually, there are two questions and they're both related. So I'm going to read them to you at once, Carl, and then you can sort of slice and dice as you need to. So they want to know what workloads have been benefited the most from the move to the cloud, and which are staying on-prem and are likely to do so in the future. And the second related question is, are there specific verticals that are enjoying greater adoption or success than others?
Well, I'll take the first question first, I guess. So,
okay.
What we're finding is larger firms taking longer to move to the cloud because they have more complex data centers and more, difficult. It's more difficult to untangle their applications and put them into a form that makes them work in the cloud. I'm trying to remember what the first question was because I got caught up in the second one. What was that again?
What workloads will benefit most from being in the cloud and which will most likely stay on-prem?
Well, I think I'd do it backwards and say the ones that would most likely stay on-prem are the ones that are tied to things that are going on-prem. So, for instance, if you're a manufacturing firm and you're doing automated shop floor control, obviously you have computers in the shop floor that are controlling that process directly, and you may have higher level processes that are tied to those that you also want to be on-prem. In other words, it's a latency issue. If you need to have processing that has very low latency relationship to other processes, then you probably need to put those together. Okay. I think that kind of covers the question you asked. As far as the types of firms, we're seeing this is an interesting one because early on, because we've been watching this process for a while, we saw a lot of pushback from financial services firms, mainly for regulatory reasons. We can't move our data there because we're not allowed to have certain classes of data that's not physically in our data center. Well, a lot of them worked around that, and a lot of them worked around that through, advanced security features so that it's guaranteed that even though they have sensitive data in the cloud, the personnel who work for the cloud provider can't see the data. They just can't, okay? And since then, we've seen a lot of uptake from financial services firms, especially things like multinational banks and insurance companies. And apart from that, new workloads, retail, commercial retail, online retail functionality, that sort of thing, very big in the cloud because they need that flexible scaling. Because as you know, in the retail, sometimes there's a lot of demand, sometimes there's a little, sometimes it's unpredictable. You need a flexible environment to run those systems. So, but in general, the industries that go to the cloud are the ones that need the flexibility the most. But we think most industries, it'll be the exception rather than the rule regarding cloud migration.
Got it. Thank you. Final question for you, Carl. So we saw a lot of adoption of the cloud and acceleration with the pandemic and remote work and that sort of thing. What do you see for the trends in the future? Is that going to slow down somewhat, or?
Well, rates of this kind never plot to a straight line because it's not possible. So they plot to a curve, obviously. But what we see is that I think what you can do is you can imagine the move to the cloud in two waves. There's the small and medium-sized enterprise. They're very busy, very actively moving to the cloud right now. Okay, many, if not most of them, are running packaged applications. So they're buying the cloud versions of those applications, or they're buying other SaaS applications that do basically the same thing. And they don't have much of it in the way of IT, so they don't have that, they don't have that issue of legacy that they have to move. Then the larger mid-size to the large enterprises are a little later on. Right now, they're all involved in private cloud and hybrid cloud exercises. And so you'll see a second wave probably in a couple of years where you'll see those moving to the cloud. That first wave was indeed accelerated by COVID because people wanted to get that functionality up there. They're actually rapidly transforming their business models. In some cases, they're doing what they had planned to do, but doing it much faster. So for instance, a retail organization that says, oh, we're planning eventually to offer dynamic delivery of our products, Well, the COVID hit and they said, oh, we got to do it right now, so they sped up their process. And we saw a lot of adoption as a result of that.
Great. Time for one last question. And Emma, this one is to you. And someone is interested to hear about the details of how we're moving on-prem data and Ingress to the cloud. You're on mute.
So this one really depends upon the particular use case. So what we have established is a framework where we would go in and do an assessment, figure out exactly what is required, what do the success criteria look like, what's the time frame, and so on. And then we would work with you on the on that actual migration, the logistics of moving your data, moving your applications, the validation, making sure that we've captured. So we have a capability called query recording playback. So we can record a workload that happens on premise. When we switch it to cloud as part of user acceptance testing, we can replay that workload, and that will be a multi-user workload. So we'd actually take something that was representative of a busy part of your day or week or month, and that's what we'd replay to validate your cloud environment. But it really is there's no one answer to that question, which is why coming in and doing that assessment is what makes the most sense. Some organizations are fairly sophisticated, have adopted cloud and other parts of the business, and they understand well what it is that they want to do. For others, it's I'm just starting on this journey to cloud. I'd like to understand what it looks like. As there's an education process required there. So we'll do whatever it takes to help our customers take that next step.
Excellent. And I just wanted to chime in, all of the resources that Emma has mentioned on the query playback and recording, and also the readiness assessment, are available on our website under Ingress Next Solutions. So I encourage you to go there. And once again, thank you, Emma, and thank you, Carl, and thanks to everyone for attending today.